Hello.
Welcome, welcome. This is our invention boot camp. We're zooming through hands-on engineering design. It's been wonderful, and I'm very happy to see you again and meet you again. We met last 2 years ago at
That's
New
it.
Relic, and that was a mind-blowing experience. Thanks for joining us again today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited to be here. I'm stirring my coffee, so
Uh-huh,
pardon
uh-huh,
me for all the clanking.
uh-huh. So from your email, you had an idea of talking to us for a bit, and then we'll take questions. Is that still seem like a good idea? I think it
That's
is a
still
good
a
idea.
great idea. And then if you have any, I know an option was like an interview format. If
Hmm.
you have any questions that you think while I'm talking or presenting that are, great time to ask, go ahead. Please feel free to interrupt. I like
Hmm.
to think of this more of a dialogue than anything else. We're having a
Hmm.
conversation together.
That's great. That's great. That's great. Well, as you're ready, I know you're a solutions engineer for New Relic. I mentioned that before you arrived, and that those words might not all mean something. So maybe you could help us start with that, a little bit of that. And we are curious in general about the process of invention, but really the personal dimension of how we grow into be inventors and what it takes, and all our stories are so interesting, and I know you've got some amazing stories.
Yeah, awesome. Well, so I'm going to do something a little unconventional. Jerry's probably not going to be surprised by this at all. But instead of telling you about what I do and who I am going to start the talk
Uh-huh.
and will incorporate more about myself into this. So I promise it's
Bravo.
going to make sense when you all kind of feel out what I'm going to be talking about today. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, and you probably will see my dog off on the side. He's, having a great day. So there's lots of playing happening. There might be some barking occurring. So you'll have to just kind of bear with me there.
we're,
And
we're gonna follow you.
awesome. So
We're
I'm
gonna
going
follow you.
to share
Uh-oh.
my screen, and it's saying that it doesn't know what's happening. Oh, that's unusual.
Try again. I clicked the button.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I will try again. And if the screen share doesn't work, the screen share just does not work. Let's see if this works. I'm going to share my Google Chrome. Allow Zoom to share screen. Oh, you know what's so funny? I apparently have not given Zoom.
Permission.
Yeah. And so I'm gonna have to, I think, leave and join. So give me 30 seconds. I'm gonna be right back.
Okay.
Okay, Mike. Joke time.
Oh, I was gonna tell Jerry that on social media I renamed like our guest speaker or guest talk presentation. I named it Innovation Conversation.
Ooh,
Ooh.
All right.
alliteration.
Grace.
I'm back and now it's working. That's gonna be that real time, real life, as we say, live demoing. I demo for a living. So I'll give you a little clue about what I do. I share technical tools with customers and clients and potential customers and clients for a living. And so we always say the first rule of demoing or the first rule of presenting is anything and everything that will technically go wrong will go wrong. So I've literally been on a stage at Amazon's tech conference and my presentation wasn't working properly, and it kept on, when I clicked on the links to take me into our product, it kept on taking me to a web browser and making me search for it. So I basically just went with it. So, and there I think we're 500 people in attendance. So first rule of thumb is
Mhm.
anything that's gonna go wrong is gonna go wrong, and that's actually a-okay, especially when you're messing with technology. I think you all can see my screen and you probably can see this presentation. Awesome. Let me know if you can't for any reason. And do you all see yourselves as well? Like the little icons of your pictures? Okay, I'm gonna minimize us. So that way you don't have to look at yourself in the recording. Awesome. So today we're actually going to be having a conversation about the power of personal narratives. This is one of my favorite things to talk about for a number of reasons. One, because I think that knowing your story helps you to share your story, which helps you to do a lot of different kinds of things. First one being introducing yourself. A big part of innovating is being able to get people to collaborate with you. And if people don't feel like they know who you are, they're not going to want to collaborate with you. Another big piece about understanding yourself and knowing your own story is it helps you figure out what kinds of innovations you're going to want to create. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more here at the middle when I introduce myself by telling you a story. But first, I want to define a few things. I love the definitions for authenticity and the definitions for a pitch, because I think a lot of times when people hear that they have to tell a story about themselves, they think that they are pitching. They think that they are trying to produce a reaction from people. They believe that they are telling their story to get a thing. And that's sometimes very true, but you can always be authentic, even if you are pitching. I think that sometimes we believe that telling a story about ourselves either has to feel forced or has to feel fake, or maybe we just don't even want to share or be vulnerable, and that's totally okay too. But the idea is we want to feel genuinely ourselves no matter what approach we might take. So I always love to put these definitions up just because sometimes we forget what the actual like Webster, like the Merriam-Webster definition of what a authentic, person or story is, or what a pitch is, right? So the goal here is, how do we get to be genuinely ourselves when we talk to other people? So how to share your story. So these slides are going to be really fun. I don't take myself too seriously most of the time, even though I do identify as a serious person. I just happen to have a good sense of humor. There's a couple of, in my opinion, do's and don'ts that I think are very easy to identify pretty quickly. So who knows who the person on the left is? Anybody?
I do.
I don't know who you are. I do, but shout it out. Who is it?
It's Elon Musk.
That's
Uh-huh.
right. And then who's on the right?
Anyone?
Oprah.
That's right. Oprah. Okay, so Elon Musk and Oprah are two very brilliant people. I would argue that they have and continue to change the world. I would also argue that they have two very different stories, two very different approaches to telling their stories, and one is potentially more likable than the other, depending on who you ask. Something that they both have in common is they're authentically themselves. I did put a no-no square on Elon, but not because I'm just putting a no-no square on Elon. I'm putting a no-no square on Elon because I think that the way that Elon has shared his story is a bit complex. It's a lot of, one would say I and self-centered ego. And the way that Oprah has built her career and shared her story has been about a collective. And I think that that's the number one part about sharing your story is whenever you hear Elon Musk's story, it's about how Elon Musk got Elon Musk to where Elon Musk is today. Whenever you hear parts of Oprah's story, it's about all the people along the way who believed in Oprah the way Oprah believed in Oprah. Both of these people are very confident. Both of these people believe in their vision, are convicted in their ideas, build great innovations, but not both of these people tell their story in a collective we. And when I say a I mean with the understanding that we are all formed by our experiences and that we all have had someone either be our villain or be our hero, which has brought us to where we are today. And your story is all about you. Your approach should be authentic to you. But I always encourage folks to remember about everyone else that's in their story, because the more you tell a story that shares a little bit more of your deepest, accomplishments or greatest fears, the more your listener understands you. How many people here today feel like they know a lot about Elon Musk? And you can just say, I do or I don't, since I can't see you.
I do.
I don't.
Okay, so there's an I do and there's an I don't. How many people here feel like they know a lot about Oprah?
I do.
I do.
So there were maybe a few more I do's. Oprah's story is a little bit more accessible in the sense of she's shared more details. I know a bit about Elon Musk because I had a roommate who used to manage the Tesla store at the mall in, I think, Clackamas. I don't really know. I've not been to that mall, so I couldn't tell you. But that's how I know about Elon. So I knew about Elon Musk in 2014, 2013, before he was more of a household name, because my roommate would tell me stories about being on conference calls with him because he was a manager of the store. So I got to hear a little bit more about Elon than maybe the general public does. A secondhand account, of course. I never spoke to him or met him, but it made me feel like I knew him a little more. So when I hear about some of his online activities or some of the things that he's saying on the internet, I always wonder to myself, is this in alignment with who Elon seemed to be at least a couple of years ago when my friend was an employee of his, right? So, and I would say yes. The way he spoke about Elon was a little bit of what I call a brain bully, because he's brilliant and he let everyone know exactly how smart he was all of the time. And he's also an amazing innovator. That same brain creates all of these really great innovations all of the time, but people find it very hard to like him, even people who work closely with him. I've also, known someone who worked for him as a vice president of one of his teams, and they said the same thing. Whereas I'm sure, I could almost guarantee that Oprah is just as tough of a boss as Elon Musk, but her story makes her so much more relatable to a lot more people. So that's just tip number one. A few things to keep in mind when telling your story. Who are you? I start here because I think that this is the most complicated question of human history, or even maybe all history, right? Maybe there are some non-human, mammals or non-mammals who are also questioning who they are, but what makes you tick? Like, break that down. And what I mean by that what are the ideas that are together making you you? What are the maybe not so great parts of yourself? We can call it trouble. And then what are the beats? Like, what gets you going? What makes you move? What brings you to the surface and makes you shine? I ask this because I think that a lot of folks don't know who they are. And I say that I had a better sense of who I was when I was 15 or 16 than I do at 33, because that person had dreams. That person didn't take no for an answer. That person was so sure of the life she was going to have. And this person, not so much, not in a bad way, but I might actually be a little more flexible now. I may be a little bit more open to different great outcomes of my life, right? So having a good understanding of who you are means you have to break yourself apart a little. You have to figure out what are the dimensions of you, what makes you tick. How much to share? So, some folks love to share a lot. I don't want to call it oversharing because I don't want to attach any judgment, but some people are more open than others. I'm one of those people. I have a list of things I always share that seem personal but are not personal to me. An example of that is where I was born, where I was raised, the fact that my parents and my brother and I have the same name. So to most people, that would seem like deeply personal information. To me, it's the personal information I'm always comfortable sharing, even with strangers. And I developed that because there became a time in my life where I realized I wasn't as open and I wasn't sharing as much as most people do. For example, my mom's name is Grace. My name is Grace. My dad's name is William. My brother's name is William. I didn't realize until I was in college that a lot of people didn't know my mom's name, even people I had grown up with. And when someone mentioned that they didn't realize my mom and I had the same name, I was flabbergasted, confused, shocked. I clutched my pearls. I was like, how did you miss that? And you know what they said? They said, you never told me. And that is where I got this rule from: how much to share. There's nothing wrong with being private. I'm a big fan of being a private person, but I do think that there's a difference in being private and being closed off. And if you're closed off and you don't share, how can you innovate? Like, truly, some of the best ideas I've ever had have come to me when talking to strangers, have been me sharing something about myself and someone who doesn't know me well making a connection to that and saying something that really inspired me to take that thought even further. You can never, as my mom says, you can never underestimate how important those interactions in passing are in shaping who you become. And so I always say, share a little bit of yourself with someone new and share more of yourself with those you know. It's always incredible what happens when you become vulnerable. I think that a lot of people are scared of vulnerability. I am too, but the more open I've become, the more willing I've been to share the things I feel safe to share, the more I have realized that there are so many people out there who feel like me, who think like me, who go through so many of the things that I go through. And it's really, really powerful to find your community, even if it's not a community you'll be in forever. And, you all are of the age where I think sometimes it can be unsafe to share, right? I know online bullying is really bad. I mean, it's bad for adults too, I'll be honest. But I think for teenagers in a digital world, I didn't grow up with so much internet everywhere. And now it seems like everything you do is online. Someone recorded it. Someone took a screenshot of a text. Someone shared a photo of you out there. And I think that it makes it hard to understand how to share properly because there's so many ways to share. But something that I always say that I stand by is physical proximity is not the same as emotional nearness. So what do I mean by that? Being close in space doesn't mean that you are close in your heart. And so maybe you do share a lot online. Maybe you have a following. Maybe you are an influencer. I don't know. That's pretty cool. But just because you share doesn't in that manner doesn't mean that people really get to see the heart of you. And I would encourage everyone to take a chance and show the heart of who they are to someone and see what really beautiful things can come from that. And then last but not least, in taking us into my story, why does your story even matter? I get this question so much from folks of all ages, and I always remind them of when they were little. When kids are little, most kids, I don't want to, children are a monolith, but a lot of kids will share. They'll tell you about who they want to be when they grow up, who they were last week. I have nephews who are 10 months old, or I guess 11 months old, years old and 10 years old. And whenever I talk to them, even the little one who can barely speak, he, makes noises, but I can tell he's telling me about his story. He wants to be heard. And that's why your story matters, because when you can tell your story and you can articulate who you are, you can focus and you can ask the right questions. And when you get focused and you get clear and you know what questions to ask, you can then start to really be in charge of how you collaborate with other people, and you can be in charge of how you show up for your own ideas. The thing that I think is so powerful that people miss a lot of times when they say, I want to invent the next great thing, or I want to build, this cool product, or I want to be the next Elon Musk or Oprah Winfrey, is that these people were inspired by their stories. You don't innovate in a vacuum. Your story is what brings you to where you are in your idea. And so let's, see it in action. So story time. So we started off, you all heard my name. I'm Grace Andrews. I work at New Relic. I am I'm now a solutions consultant, but at the time when Gary met me, I was a solutions engineer. Not that much different in the jobs, but my job is what I call a technical translator. I make sure that my customers understand how to use the product, the technical product that we have. But how did I even get there, and how does that make me me? When I was a little girl, I immigrated from Ghana, West Africa to Dallas, Texas with my family. And my father was already here 2 years prior, so we actually joined him in Texas. And we were, I think now like the colloquial term is working class, but when I was a kid, it was just poor. But everything is branded now, so you gotta have a brand and a spin. But we were poor, and we didn't have a lot of opportunities to do activities like the Innovation Bootcamp. Where we lived in Dallas, there just wasn't too much of that around that was accessible for us. And this was the early 90s. And we eventually moved to a small town in rural West Tennessee, a place you never heard of. And well, maybe you've heard of it. It's called Dyersburg. So if you have heard of it, kudos. If you haven't, totally normal. And my dad wanted us to really have an advantage, even though we couldn't necessarily afford camps or afford like tutors or any of the advantages that some parents might be able to give their kids. And so my dad started buying up old how-to books. And I'm talking about, these books were from like the 1940s. He was getting them from garage sales. He was getting them from the Salvation Army, just old books. And he got this, basically it was kind of like an encyclopedia set of these how-to books. And they were focused in STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And they had experiments inside that you could do, like how to power a light bulb with a potato, or how to take a seed from a plant or a fruit and grow more of that fruit, etc. And so he gave us those books and he was like, innovate. And we were like, huh? And he was like, well, can't y'all read? And we were like, yeah. He was like, okay, so innovate. And so my brother and I, who's 5 years older, whose name is William, we were always in those books. And we took apart the family microwave, and my mom was like, you better put it together and it better work. We built a computer. My parents could afford at the time, it was like a low-level functioning computer. So my brother bought more memory, bought more RAM, and he rebuilt the computer and made me help him. And we were being inspired and powered by these books. And that was my first introduction into engineering. And I always say, I'm an engineer, I'm a systems thinker. I may work in technology, but that's not the limitation of my skill set. And that's because I saw my parents and my brother engineering solutions all the time, whether it was by you know, books, or whether it was my mom learning how to sew so she could make me some really nice clothes that we normally wouldn't have been able to afford, but fabric is a lot cheaper than a fully formed outfit. I saw them innovating every day, and that's really been the backbone of who I am. A lot of people ask me, well, you write and you draw and you know, play sports and you do public speaking, you did theater, and you like math, and you're also good at words and all, and you know, they just kind of go on and on. But it's because I was raised in an environment where you learned the skill you needed to learn in order to be successful. There were no limitations in our household. Maybe the outside world put a lot of limitations on us because we were immigrants or because we were low income or because we were African. But inside of our house, we were always allowed to take up room. And me knowing my story in that way has really shaped how I show up at work. So when I work with my customers, there's never a problem that can't be solved. Not because I'm so smart or because I'm the best at what I do, but because I am determined to engineer some kind of solution because I know that by collaborating, we can. And what that's really powered for me in my personal life is I work on a lot of projects. One of the projects that I'm working on is an empath accelerator. Why? Well, because I was a highly sensitive kid. I'm a highly sensitive adult. And what does that mean? It means that I sense and take on a lot of the emotions and energies of the people around me. It's what makes me really good at my job at work, but it's also what makes me want to do something more. And so I'm innovating on that idea of empathy, which is pretty rare. A lot of people talk about empathy, a lot of people say the word, but they have a hard time applying the philosophy to their life. And so I am launching an accelerator with a good friend of mine based on this idea that we can use empathy at work to develop our careers professionally and personally. And that's, you know, I don't think it's necessarily groundbreaking, but I think applying it to the way we work is very new, and it's informed by my story. I know exactly what it's like to feel like you're not understood at work or at school. I know what it's like to feel like you're the only person. I know what it's like to be scared to let people down or to feel like you can't be authentically yourself because other people won't understand. And so I took that experience, I took my story, and I'm innovating on that for other people. And so that's an example of how, because I know who I am and I know what I've come from, I know exactly what I want to build for someone else. So here are the 5 tips for finding your voice on that note. I'm going to send this presentation to you, but so you don't have to worry about taking notes and we won't spend any time here, but I really want to go straight into questions, and I really want to talk about how we can leverage our voices and our purpose and our passion in order to find joy. Like, that's the real power of your story, is when you know yourself, or as I think it's Shakespeare that says, know thyself. I think then you are perfectly positioned to really understand others. So with that, I will stop sharing and open up for questions. All right. So is it Bia?
B. One, I really like your story. And two, my question is, what do you think, like, what thoughts do you think motivated you to go through college and to become successful and to always keep going and to know yourself and be confident in your thoughts?
I think that the number one thing that allowed for me to do that is I did not mind 2 things. One being really uncomfortable. I've been uncomfortable most of my life for one reason or another. And I did not mind not being good at something. When I was a little girl, my mom made us play 3 sports. And then she made us do an art, and she made us do a like a community service element. And she also made us do something that was quote unquote fun, but hard. And the reason that we had 3 sports, we had our primary sport, we had our secondary sport, and then we had the sport that we really weren't that good at, but we needed to go to anyway. And it was because my parents were trying to help us understand what it felt like to not be the best at something, right? Because our primary sports, we dedicated our whole life to that. When we weren't at practice, we were thinking about being in practice. We were thinking about our sport. We were thinking about playing. We were working at it. But our third tier sport, oh no, that was like you showed up to practice and you just hoped you were going to do okay on game day. And what it allowed for us to do is learn how to work hard at things we weren't good at, and also be comfortable losing at them. And my parents always had this philosophy, and they always said, it doesn't matter if you win or lose, but you have to know that you did your absolute best. And so if your absolute best is a C on the test, be proud of your C. If you know you studied, you know that you got help from a tutor, you know you asked the teacher, and your best was a C, you know what? Then that just is what it is. Did you learn? Right? And I think that it's hard to apply that even now. I love to be good at things. I love to win. I've been telling people I'm a fire sign. I'm an Aries. We are winners. And so it's hard even now as a person who I work in a career in a field that I'm not the best at all. At all. There are so many people. If there was like a rating system, I would definitely be towards the bottom, but I am still good at some of the things my job entails. And I take a lot of pride in that. And I continue to develop the parts of me that I'm not so good at. And so technology is tough, right? Anything, I think all jobs are tough, I'll be honest, but tech is so difficult because it changes so rapidly. And I've really had to adopt a philosophy of all I can to control is the enthusiasm I bring, even if the outcome is less than ideal. So that's the number one thing, show up with a lot of enthusiasm and be okay with a less than desirable outcome. And always remember that your outcome is not the definition of you. A lot of people hate to not be good at something because they think it means that they're not good enough, but that has nothing to do with you. Your worth is attached to the fact that you are worthy, and not any action you can do or any, skill you don't possess. If you show up, you try hard, you are a kind person, then that's all that really truly matters. And so I actually just every day I tell myself that I'm like, today is going to be a great day, and it's going to be a great day because I deserve to have a great day. And even though it's so silly, I set that intention every day. And some days are different. Some days I'm like, today's a day that I'm just going to listen really well to other people. Or like, today is a day that I'm grumpy, but I'm going to find something to be happy about. And so just really checking in with me constantly. And when for those of you on the call who are going to go to college or go to trade school or go to, outside is closed, but maybe some of you are trying to take a gap year at some point when outside opens up again. Don't be afraid to do the things that scare you the most. I've had the most incredible life, and I have done the most terrifying things. I have been so scared every step I've ever taken. And don't be like dangerous, like don't just like walk off a cliff or something like that, right? But sometimes you have to, theoretically, allegorically step off the cliff, because there's some really beautiful experiences you have when you just surrender to the idea of the experience.
That's beautiful, beautiful. Can you expand on what happens when you step off that cliff and you stub your toe? How do you nurture yourself? I mean, you've given us really great pointers, like, yeah, but sometimes it hurts.
Yeah, so I always say you got to have a fail plan. And so you have to be ready to hurt. And, you know, I think that for me, I am a walker. I walk and walk and walk. And I had a dog for 10 years who passed in December, and we would walk 2 to 3 hours a day. And no matter how horrible my day, I walked and I did walking meditations. So, what I mean by that is, I would either listen to soothing music or I would just listen to the sound of the universe, the traffic, whatever it was, and I would unpack myself, right? And some days the walks were super emotional. I'd be randomly crying and I didn't know why. Some days they were super joyful and I would feel so supported by the strangers I would meet who would smile at me, or the cats or dogs I would see, right? And so you've got to have a plan for when you hurt, how to heal. And I think that a lot of folks just brush it off. I used to be a brush it off kind of gal. I'd be like, well, that's okay. It didn't go well. So next time it's going to be better, right? And I actually learned to stop brushing it off. When things don't go well, sit in that, get comfortable in that introspection, and learn how to release judgment, because stubbing your toe only hurts because you're judging yourself for stubbing your toe. But if you say, I have stubbed my toe, this is very painful, this hurts, I don't like it, it doesn't feel good, and you give yourself time to just be and hurt a little bit, you can go on, and then the next time you jump, you're going to curl your toes up a little and you're going to miss whatever corner of the cliff you hit that you stubbed your toe on, right? And I think that when you sit in the pain, you start to understand how things that happen to you, sometimes they're not about you. It's not as personal as it feels. It's a situation that's about a lesson. And are you learning your lesson? And the only way to learn is to sit. And this is a go, 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 go culture. People don't sit enough for my taste. And I always recommend people journal. That's something that I did a lot as a youngster that I am bringing back into my adulthood, and going back to read those old journal entries, and not like 10 years later when you uncover the dust off of the journal, but the next day or the next week. Sometimes I'll write something and I'll come back to it 2 or 3 months later, and it will force me to confront the person I am and was. And that also is a method of going through the motions of, I say, expanding. And when you expand and take up room and you stretch, it's just, you're gonna have to feel it. So don't be afraid of the feelings, don't be afraid of the pain, and really have a strategy for how you work through it. And also have a support network. I have friends that I can call and I can complain about stub toes with, and they will offer me deep empathy and deep comfort. And then they'll say, okay, we've complained about this long enough. Are you ready to move on? And then it's time to brush off your shoulders and go. So having a strategy that kind of works for your disposition, your personality, your life is number one. So build your fail plan today. You got to have one, and it changes often. And mine always accompanies a Spotify soundtrack.
Awesome. Jerry, you're muted.
I did the space bar thing, but not when it's in the chat window. We got some questions in the chat, and
Oh yeah, let me see. 7
yeah.
chat people. Oh no, someone was not seeing the presentation.
Yeah, down a little bit.
Missed that one. Whoops. All right. So what's it like being a POC in the tech industry? How has this affected you? Suzanne, great question. So, being a Black identifying person in tech, It's rough out here in these streets. I'm not gonna lie to any of y'all. It is not the funnest at all times, and it's because you walk into a space and you're noticeably different. I once went to a conference where there were about 1,000 attendees, and there were, I think, 6 Black people, and 2 of them were women, maybe. And that's just a snapshot of my everyday life. And I've been in white spaces a lot of my life, so I become kind of desensitized to it. I just walk into the room knowing people are going to underestimate me. I look younger than I actually am. So a lot of people think I'm not going to tell you how old people think I am, but I'm 33 and people don't ever think I'm 33. And so they'll treat me like I'm young because they think I'm younger, which why should you be disrespectful to young people? I don't know. And, so it's been rough. But what I've done is I'm a confronter. I like to stand in front of the mess. I don't like to hide the mess. I don't like to ignore the mess. I don't like to even look around from the mess. So I really kind of leaned into who I am, whether people like it or not. So what does that mean for me? I do things that I call putting on my armor. And so one of the things I do is I wear like really bright lipsticks. So I'm talking about blue, gunmetal gray, purple, dark green, and I'll wear them to like business meetings. And my brother is always asking, have they fired you yet for the way you look? And I'm like, they can't do that. It's against the law. But they don't do that because it's authentically me. Now, maybe Jerry can't wear gray lipstick. That might not be the look, but maybe a nice blue. I could see you pulling off a blue. But because I'm so authentically myself, it works. Whatever it is works. And so my customers compliment my lipstick. They don't look at it too much or think about it too deeply. And I think it's the same thing as being a Black woman in technology. I'm different and I'm going to stand out. And maybe some people, and by some, I mean a lot of people, are going to underestimate me, but that's cool. I love being an underdog. I love being in stealth mode. I don't mind if people don't think I'm not supposed to be somewhere because I know where I'm supposed to be. It took me a very long time to get here. I did not start off here. I spent a lot of time shrinking myself in spaces because I did not feel like I deserved to be there. And that's the thing about worth. It doesn't matter if someone welcomes you. You be where you are supposed to be. You be where the universe puts you. It doesn't matter if they don't like it. And that's something that I still work on, that I've had to work on. And I think that for people who feel different, you're going to have to work at it. It just is what it is, especially if you're in an industry where you don't look like folks. But that's exactly why I am co-launching this Empath Accelerator. It's focused on women of color and female identifying persons, exactly for that reason, right? So it's not that we intend to run Empath Accelerators with everybody. So if people are cisgender, heteronormative, Caucasian men, cool, you can come too. But this first one that we're launching it with women of color at our heart, because that's who we are and that's the pain and the hurt that we felt, right? So this is another example of how my story is shaping my innovation, and it's shaping the audience I even want to impact with that innovation. But yeah, so we can, and my email is, I'm going to give my email out. Y'all can contact me. I don't know if that's a thing that y'all are allowed to do, but anyone can contact me because my goal is to be accessible to anybody. If I can help you in any way, so many people have helped me and I have been so eternally grateful. So I want to do the same for you. Next question is, what kind of things do you invent and design in your job? So I invent architecture. So what does that mean? Is I help our customers build solutions based on our product. Our product is really expansive. So it's everything from things like cloud technology to databases to analytics tools and visualizations built off of those analytics. So I will design the technical strategy, and then I will design the implementation plan, and then I will execute on parts of that plan and then bring in other teammates to execute on other parts. So my design is all about technical architecture. In my personal life, I am working on a podcast. I'm working on a platform for native storytelling. So I may eventually design or have to implement an app, but right now I'm designing like graphics, and I'm learning how to use audio software. So I'm editing the podcasts I produce for myself and for my friend. And I'm learning, I don't know if I'm inventing anything, but I'm learning and designing a lot of those elements as well. And then maybe this will be our last question, because I know time is, when do we have to stop?
I'm flexible. I want to be respectful of your time.
Okay.
We will pick up our day in a bit, but yeah,
Okay.
please.
Okay, so then I'm going to answer these questions. I want to make sure everyone's questions get answered. Okay, so this is from Whitman. In tech, it is really easy as a student to feel like I never catch up the knowledge that already exists. Where do you think a student can look for the confidence to believe that they will have something meaningful to contribute? That's a really beautiful question for a number of reasons. I think tech is so strange. And I'll tell you why I think it's strange. Technology is a place where very few things we create are tangible. You can't touch the internet. You can't touch Google. You can't touch Amazon Prime. I mean, you can touch the package that comes, but you can't necessarily touch some of these ideas. They're so ethereal. They're so, amorphous. They blend and they move and they shift. And that lack of, I think, tangible, concrete, fixed items is in the benefit of a student, because what that means is you can get confident about what you like. So you like data, then data analytics is a great place to start. You like drawing, graphic design is a great place to start. You like understanding people, user experience is a great place to start. I say you have to start at your passion and your purpose, right? So sometimes we're passionate about things that are maybe not why we were put on this earth. And sometimes what we were put on this earth to do, we haven't quite figured out yet. But I think if you start where you can get excited, you'll find both. Right. And so I know I don't like coding. I'm going to say it right now, up front, real loud. I dislike writing code. I don't hate it. I don't love it. And I can tolerate it. But I don't write a lot of code in my life, right? I do more of the architecting and I implement tools. Now, I do sometimes have to write code, and I have to, watch a YouTube video, read documentation, etc. Or I have to learn about new technologies that I'm not that excited about because my customers use them, right? But I then flip the lens of whatever I'm learning to what I'm passionate about. So when my customers say, oh, well, we're using, what's something somebody said the other day? They're using a product called Sentry. And Sentry is an error management software for your applications. It lets you know where errors are occurring and down to the code level. Do I care about Sentry? But I care about my customer. I care about their experience. I care about whatever difficulties they're facing using the product, right? So I listened to how the product works, even though I've never used the product before, even seen it. And then I took that and I distilled it into how our product does that thing. And so I recentered it on what I cared about and what I enjoy: technical storytelling, architecting, and listening. So wherever you can get excited, use that as your way in, even when you learn things that you don't like. When it comes to feeling confident, I think if you start there, it helps with your confidence. I'm not always confident about the technical stuff. I'm just not. But you know what I'm good at? I'm a good listener. And I can draw a diagram to save my life. So when people talk, I'll just draw out what they're saying the technology or the product is supposed to do. And then I'll say, hey, is this what it does? Show them my picture. they can say, oh, I would maybe move this, host over here, or I would move this API call over there. And then we have a definition we're sharing that's building my confidence and also building their confidence in me, that I'm listening closely, I'm adaptive, and I'm ready to create a solution for their needs. So I think that that's how I build confidence all the time, is by leaning into the things I'm good at and listen, 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 listen. The better you are at listening, the more confident you will be at every other part of your life. I promise. I guarantee it. Iris, as a Black woman, how do you pull it off besides being yourself? How do you influence others to know that you're like them? That's a great, that's a great question. My philosophy for life is vulnerability first. So what I started doing when I realized that people were coming for me in a non-positive way, so not like coming for me for like lunch, but coming for me in a mean way, is I started to lead with my hurt. So what do I mean by that? I've had situations where people have said things to me that were offensive, where people have said things to me that were hurtful. And in the past, I, was busy brushing it off, trying to just be like everybody else. But then I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm not. So when people say things to me, I do what I call instant correction, which is really hard for me because I'm not prone to correcting people. I don't like that. I like to let people be, as long as they're not harming themselves or others. I'm like, well, and I try to always be understanding of where I think someone is coming from. Now, with that in mind, people have like on purpose talked down to me about something. And you know what I'd say? You know what? I don't know what you're talking about, but it seems to make you feel really good to make me feel really small. And if that's what you came to do today, well, you succeeded, because now I feel tiny and all I wanted to do was show up and learn. When I tell you that this method is effective, y'all, oh, blessed Lord, it is very good. And, I didn't start doing that on purpose. I started doing that because I have one of those faces where, I did theater for a decade, but my face shows everything. If I'm excited, I'm like, yay. If I'm sad, I'm like, no. If I'm confused, I'm like, what? If I'm mad, I'm like, right? So I have a fully expressive face, just like Tyra Banks on America's Next Top Model, minus the modeling career. And so with that in mind, people would be like, you are looking at me crazy. And I would be like, because what you're saying is a mess. Right? So people started to even notice my reactions, and I use that as my window to be like, because what you were saying is disrespectful. Let me tell you why. Or what you were saying is hurtful. Because what I find happens a lot more than like blatant disrespect is dismissive comments and just hurtful language, right? And what I think is so interesting is technology is an industry. I'm an anthropologist and a sociologist by academic training, first and foremost. That is my passion. That is the love of my life. That is where I feel like I'm so excited to do or learn about that field that I feel like I'm buzzing. And that's, what excites me more than anything else in life. And that means that it's people that excite me more than anything in life, and understanding people better. And so when I figured out that other people were not trying to understand me, or that technology was a space where a lot of misunderstood people went for whatever reason, right? A lot of people gravitate towards tech because it's where it's not about what you look like. It's not about if you're popular or not. It's about your skill set. If you can do it, then you absolutely are able to make space for yourself and have a really promising career. But what that also brings up is sometimes people in this field, once again, this is grand generalizations, they're people who are hurting. They're people who were picked on. They're people who were bullied for whatever reason. And they're people who haven't always had the opportunity to articulate those hurts well. And so what I found is a lot of people I work with are under socialized, and their socialization has happened across a screen and not in person with people. And I had a very isolated childhood. I didn't have a lot of friends. I was like popular, I guess, but I spent a lot of time by myself reading or with my mom. And my brother was off at college. My father split his time between the US and Ghana, so I didn't see him a lot. And it was just really like my mom and me when I was in middle school and high school. And what I found is I found so many kindred spirits in technology, because I found so many people who know what it feels like to be separate like that. And not it's not always on purpose, but then you find a way to say it was, right? I've always been a solitary creature. It's just kind of the nature of my personality, but I do wish people would have invested more time in me. I do wish that folks would have wanted to be my friend. And so I understand that reaction when I see it in other people. Sometimes what it brings to the surface is a hypercritical nature and a judgmental tone that is not what you mean, but it's how you protect yourself. And so that's the thing I had to learn, is that a lot of people are here in this space and many spaces and many fields, but especially technology, protecting themselves. And their armor isn't lipstick. Their armor are sharp tones. Their armor are, misplaced words. Their armor is hurtful. And when you remind them, I hurt too, it's amazing how that just melts. It just transforms so many people when you say that hurt my feelings. Not, I hate what you said, not you're an idiot, not why would you say that to me? I hurt. My feelings are hurt. And it is an approach to life that I use outside of work as well. So it's effective there, but it's been so interesting in disarming other people at work. I think a lot of folks don't use that approach in work because they're scared to. They don't want to open themselves up that way. But when I tell you 9 times out of 10, it has transformed an enemy into a friend, I mean it. Almost every time it's worked, almost every single time. And that's how, I as a Black woman show up all the time. And I'll say that to my colleagues. I'm like, you realize there's like 30 of us here. I'm the only woman and I'm the only Black person. And they'll be like, dag, oh my God, that sucks, right? Because people don't always realize. That's why you have to lead with that. Like, even if it's not a situation where it hurts, this sucks. I'm the only one here, right? And it humanizes me without having to defend me, because that's not the goal. The goal is just to open someone else up to the idea of you, because you as an idea are worthy, right? So I think that that's one way. It's a tough subject and it's hard. And I think we're in a very precarious cultural time where I think a lot of us don't talk enough about our hurts. We don't talk enough about what it feels like. So I feel like you're the only one of your kind. So I I always try to feel safe enough to make space for that. And I think it becomes a way in which everyone else can feel safe enough to make space for that in themselves too.
Wow, Grace. Thank you so much. So much. I bet there's going to be some lingering questions, and I hear your offer for receiving emails. So that's also a very generous thing. Thank you for spending time with us and for putting some ripples in our pond.
Always. It's such an honor to spend time with new people. So thank you for having me.
Great.